Hello and welcome to Media MD, the podcast where each fortnight we prescribe each other a piece of media that we have somehow missed. I am Reuben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And it's your turn this fortnight, Elliot, so what do you got for me?
Well, so this week I thought I'd do something a little bit different. And so what I've got is I've got two TV shows, and they're sort of, they're similar in some ways, so I thought I'd just let you pick which one. So I basically...
This is not how the podcast works. This is too much of a format change, so I can't handle it.
So I'm going to give you two very short pitches for each one,
right?
And then I'll sort of go into more detail.
Well, can we say what they're called first?
Yeah.
So our listeners can follow along.
Exactly. So I'm giving you the choice of either watching The 100 or iZombie.
Oh, okay. The 100 or iZombie. All right, let's go.
So,
hit me with the pitches.
Sure. So just to discuss some similarities, they're both on the CW network, which is something we can talk about later.
The CW.
But what I would say is that these are probably the two shows that I would say are the most objectively good on the network. So, I mean, there's other shows. Okay. There's other shows on there. Like, for instance, my girlfriend watches Jane the Virgin, but I do not because I don't think I'm the target audience for that show. Okay. And then
I actually hear that show's meant to be good. It's just kind of got fucked over by a really shitty title.
Well,
I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, so that's something that I'd say is true for iZombie as well. But yeah, then obviously the CW is full of all those like DC superhero shows and stuff, which I watch and I enjoy, but I would not say they're objectively good.
They're not objectively good, are they? Yeah, and then we get into the whole mess that's supernatural, and I don't even know if good can even be said in the right sentences. That objectively. So these are the two shows that I've seen on the network. Like there could be others, but these are the two shows that I've watched from the network that I would say are just both good and almost anyone should be able to enjoy them to some extent. Okay.
So I'll start with the 100. So the 100 was actually originally pitched to HBO, and has a very small but intense cult following, as I discovered when I went to Reddit after finding the show.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite easy to see how it would have fit on HBO, and it's actually, I don't even know if it would be that different. There are definitely some things that would be different, but it would actually probably be fairly similar.
What's it about?
Yeah, so it's set 100 years after there was like a nuclear apocalypse, and humanity survived out in space. So there's basically all the space stations that were out in space got together and survived. But now they're having population issues, so they're sending down 100 juvenile prisoners to the surface to see if Earth is habitable again.
Why would they choose juveniles? Why wouldn't they send adult criminals?
There's a reason given. And I mean, you'll see it. It's not great. It's clearly
clearly to target the show towards a young adult demographic. Is that the real reason?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but they get down there, and then it's mostly centered around these 100 kids trying to survive on an Earth that's been irradiated and stuff.
Australia 2.0, essentially.
Yeah, basically. And so obviously, we can go into more detail on this later, but as with any CW show, there's a bit of like drama. But I'd say the drama's really prominent in maybe the first half of season 1, and then after that, the plot just sort of gets so balls to the wall crazy that they actually stop having time for the drama. So it's actually not really an issue after about the first 5 episodes.
Yeah.
So the writers of the 100 finally found a way around the CW's drama policy.
So a traditional problem I would say the CW has is they stick to these 23 episode seasons and they always can't fill it with enough good content.
Yeah.
So do you think that the
100 doesn't have that many episodes. They're about 13 or 15.
Oh, that's good. They solved the problem the CW shows always have.
Well, I mean, for both of these shows, so iZombie's about that length as well, and it's because both of them are constantly on the verge of cancellation by the network, despite being the best shows.
So they can't afford to give them a proper 23 run.
Yeah, I think they would if they thought they were better.
Good.
It's kind of ironic. But anyway, so then moving on to iZombie. So the 100 is a very serious show. Like I said, it would fit in on HBO quite easily.
Now, I think I do know the premise of iZombie. You tell me if I'm wrong?
Yes.
It's the girl the zombie girl, and it's based on like a DC comic book or something.
Yeah.
And she eats brains, and then she like gets their knowledge or something, and she like solves crimes. I can't remember.
So she's a zombie,
right?
But if when zombies eat brains in this, they become more like humanoid. So the longer she goes without brains, the more like classic zombie she sort of becomes.
Okay.
And yeah, when a zombie eats another when a zombie eats another person's brains, they usually get some of their memories and their personality quirks. So the main character in this show ends up setting herself up at the morgue, and she eats the brains of murder victims, and then pretends to be a psychic and uses the like memories and stuff she gets to help solve the murders.
And I'm assuming since she picks up quirks of the brains she eats, there's a lot of comedy where it's like she eats the brain of like a cosplayer, and then she like wants to cosplay or something like that.
Yeah. So I think in one of the first episodes, she eats the brain of a kleptomaniac, and so she keeps stealing stuff. And it's fun though. Like what I would say about this show as compared to the 100, like I think it'll depend what sort of mood you're in. iZombie's a lot more fun. So it's made by the same people who did Veronica Mars.
Oh, okay.
And so it's very similar in a lot of ways in that it's a crime show that's got like the crime of the week that they're solving, and then there's this like really intriguing overarching plot that comes in and out quite well. But overall, I'd say iZombie's more fun. Like you can sort of sit there and just laugh at it, and it's corny, but it knows it, and it uses that quite well. Like, so for instance, the main character's name is Liv Moore.
Okay.
There's a lot more terrible pun names where that.
All right. Well, so far you want. It sounds like you want me to go with iZombie because that's speaking to my love of puns.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I'd say the 100 is a better choice if you're really interested in big classic sci-fi, like just like sci-fi TV. iZombie if you're just interested in something more fun, a bit more lighthearted, but still good. Okay.
I reckon. Well, should I pick now, or should we just find out next fortnight?
I don't think this far ahead.
I guess we should pick now, because otherwise it's going to be like our audience isn't going to know what we're going to be doing over the next 2 months. Well, maybe I'll just title the episode after the one I choose, and we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll probably watch the pilot of each one, and then I'll make my decision.
Okay, yeah, that's probably a good idea. I guess, yeah, like I was saying, with CW, there's drama. So expect a fair bit of that, especially at the start of the 100. But like I said, it tends to disappear later on. So if you can, just ignore it when you're watching the pilot for the 100.
Well, would you say, this is a good question actually, which one would you say the first episode is the most indicative of the rest of the show, or not indicative, or, you know?
Yeah, I'd say iZombie, in terms of its pilot, is a much better. Like the pilot of iZombie, like, just feels like one of the later episodes. The show actually kind of nailed exactly what it wanted to be from the start, which, you know, not many shows manage to do.
Yeah, that doesn't happen a lot. But I guess if it's an adaptation of like a comic book, then that seems probably more easy to do.
So yeah, like iZombie's pilot's going to give you a much better idea of what the show is, whereas the 100 gives you a taste of what it's going to be, but sort of mixed in with, you know, the classic sort of uncertainty that comes with most pilots.
Okay, well,
and in terms of the drama as well for iZombie, iZombie does have a lot of the classic CW drama, but I found it irritated me a lot less in this show than it did in most other CW shows, because generally in iZombie the drama is created by the plot. Like, there's plot events that happen that cause people that are actually really bad, and people react sensibly to those decisions. So the drama is actually a result of the plot.
You can have well-written character drama, it's just that the CW doesn't usually do that.
Yes. So iZombie, I would say the majority of the character drama in iZombie is actually well-written and makes sense. Like, people are, you know, fighting because of circumstances that are out of their control, and it's a reasonable reaction, not like, you know, something in Supernatural where the brothers say they're never going to see each other again 4 times a season, and then get back together.
But
for episode 1.
How else will we care about the characters if they're not constantly breaking up and going back together?
No, they are. They are.
They are. Okay, good.
There's a
Thank
lot
God.
of that.
I was going to say, what kind of a CW show is this? All right, yeah. Well, I guess we'll find out which one I pick next time. But a bit of a weird Media MD double feature.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. I'll pass us on to future Elliot and Reuben then. Thanks, past Reuben. Yeah, so I said I was going to see which one I went with and then title the episode, but as you've probably noticed, I didn't do that. And the reason for that is because I ended up watching the first season of both of these shows. So the second half of Media MD, this episode of Media MD, will contain spoilers for both the first season of iZombie and the first season of The 100. So if you want to go into those unspoiled, you can pause your podcasting device now. And if you're still here, that means you are ready to continue. So on with the show. And we are back 2 weeks later.
All right.
Oh, I thought you went there for a second.
So,
Jesus.
So which one did you do?
Okay, so let me explain my process here. So before I started watching either of them, as soon as we finished recording, I had thought about what you had said about each of the shows, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm not going to like The 100, and I am going to like iZombie. So I thought, I'll just do the pilot of The 100, and then I can say I gave it a fair try, and just drop it and move on to do iZombie. And then I watched the pilot, and it was quite bad. There were quite a lot of badness in it. And I remember you saying that it wasn't indicative. And I was like, I would give this pilot like a 2 out of 10 or something. It was so CW. There was so much weird drama. Nothing made any sense.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to watch more. And it was very weird. And so I watched the second episode. And then I think
that's the problem with the CW. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's why I watch half the shows I watch on the network. Is I sit there and I don't like this, but I'll be back next week.
Yeah, but the problem is I came back next week, or the next day or whenever I did it, and I watched the second episode and I fucking loved it. And it was like they went from, I'm putting on my tinfoil hat for this one. Here's what I actually think happened. They recorded this pilot and fucking targeted it as hard as they could to the CW. They made as much nonsense bullshit as they could, as much setup for pointless relationships as they could, just to be like, we can be one of your CW shows, here you go, here's all our bullshit that you want.
Well, and then as soon as they got accepted, they were like, fuck you.
As soon as they ordered the season, they were like, fuck this shit, we're making a good show. You can fuck off, CW. And so it's the most incredible turnaround. It goes from like a 2 out of 10 in the pilot to going to like straight to like a 7 or 8 out of 10. And it just stays at that level for the rest of the season. It was fucking crazy. So I watched that, and then I watched iZombie, and I thought, well, now I'll watch the one that I actually wanted to watch. But I found myself not enjoying iZombie as much as I had enjoyed the 100.
It's interesting that was sort of how you went into it, because I tried harder to pitch iZombie because I was worried that in my mind the 100 was an easier pitch. So I feel like 2 weeks ago I tried to push iZombie harder just because I felt like it was a harder thing to sell.
Yeah.
So apparently that worked.
You misled me quite well, Elliot. Yeah. See. Okay. Well, I guess I should break them down. I'll talk about each one, and then we'll come.
So how much iZombie did you?
I finished the first season. I finished the first season of each. Is where I got to.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a bit of a struggle. Well, I was struggling with iZombie, but then towards the end of the first season, it really does start to pick up. But it took fucking 9 episodes for that to happen. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the 100 first, and then we'll circle back around to iZombie, I reckon.
Okay. So
I can give you my thesis statement on the 100 very succinctly, and it's this. The 100 operates on a sliding scale between, at one end, the Hunger Games, and at the other end, Lord of the Flies. And when it goes to Lord of the Flies, it's good, and when it goes towards the Hunger Games, it's CW trash, right?
Yeah.
And so, basically every episode, I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, this scene, this is Lord of the Flies, that scene, that's Hunger Games, and I can like mentally sort the 2 distinct personalities that this fucking show has. And it was like, I could really see the show being so much better if instead of targeting their pilot for the CW, they had targeted their pilot for some other network and then gotten picked up by that network instead. Like, if they put in as much effort as they obviously put in to make the show bullshit to appeal to the CW, then they could go for another network and it would just be so much better. And I don't know. I mean, I really like the show, but it's tinged with this, like, disappointment, you know?
Yeah, no. Because, like, I've been watching season 4 in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I still feel watching it. Like, because there'll be just, these really great moments, and then they're just surrounded by, like, you know, people breaking... Like, people are at war and people are dying, and then they'll cut away because, you know, Octavia wants to break up with a new... Like,
whoa. No spoilers on who Octavia's dating in season 4, please. That's the most engaging part of the show. No, yeah. It's so... Like, let me give you some examples. I was watching it, and there would be episodes where it was like 95% Lord of the Flies, and it was so good. And then at the end of, like, they do this like 5 or 6 times. They end with a fucking, like, sad kind of like, you know, the type of pop song I'm thinking of, where it's like a sad pop song that's so bitter, and it's about broken hearts, and, you know, why can't me, this single white male singer of this popular pop band, just ever have a happy life? I'm so depressed. And it's this kind of song over, like, some trash relationship drama. And it's just like, why did you have to end it like this? Why couldn't you just have a fucking good moment? There's one episode which ends with a good moment, and spoiler alerts, fucking hell, did I just have a stroke? Yeah. There's one episode which ends with a good moment, and spoilers alert, whatever. It's the first moment where the show actually starts to show you that it has some kick to it, which is when this character, whose name is Wells, who has been, like, built up as the relationship love interest for the main character, he gets...
And basically one of the main characters.
Probably the second most important character on the show, yeah. And he's built up, and you can kind of predict his arc on the CW version, on the more CW version of this show, you know? Like, you can predict exactly how his arc is going to go. But then at the end of season 4, he just gets fucking killed randomly by a psychopathic child. Episode 4. At the end of episode 4, he just gets randomly murdered and his fingers chopped off by a psycho child. And it's just like, what the fuck am I watching? And then from that point on, you start seeing, like, crazy sex scenes of these like 18-year-old, 19-year-old, whatever, kids fucking each other, and, like, these people getting gruesomely murdered. And it just, like, flips into this crazy shit. And I really liked it. It was great. And there's, like, really good moments in this show, like... this psychopathic child I was mentioning, this whole truth that she killed Wells comes out. Her name is Charlotte. And the main character, who is trying to be, like, moral at this point in the story, who's trying to have morals, doesn't want her to be basically executed for her crimes. She's trying to build a better society, right?
Yeah.
And so she, who is very close with the guy who died, and the little girl who killed him, kind of form this unlikely alliance, and they basically run away from the rest of the people in the camp. And there's this moment where she's trying to save the kid Charlotte, and this kid reaches up to hold her hand because she's scared. And she, like, fucking flinches and winces. And it's like this moment where it's like proving that these characters are multifaceted, and just because she's trying to help this kid, it doesn't mean that she actually likes them or that she's going to forget about her fucking friend's death, which would happen, you know, in a regular CW show. And there's just these moments where it's like, fuck, this show has such good emotional drama sometimes, and the rest of the time it's the most fucking contrived shit I've ever heard of. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, my sister was the one who pitched this show to me. Like, she was the one who got me into it, and her description of it is she was like, it's a good HBO show hidden behind shitty CW drama.
Yeah, that's really what it is. And it's, you know what, I'm going to say it. This show has 2 personalities, and that is a great segue to talk about iZombie. So, that's the 100. Or should I do I'll do my numbers at the end, I guess. We'll loop back around.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me just swap to my 100, iZombie notes.
Well, I guess I'll just quickly mention something else about the 100 that may not have really come out in season 1, but if you do watch more of it, one of the reasons it really stands out is it's a show about the consequences of your actions and dealing with those.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you would have noticed this, but generally, most of the or the issues that people are facing generally are directly like relatable to a decision they have previously made.
Yeah.
And it's coming back to bite them in the arse.
And that's good.
And you'll see...
Yeah. That's good writing.
And you see it more and more as the show progresses. And because it's generally the theme. So the show, like, even in Season 3, things that somebody did in Season 1 are still sort of coming back to bite them in the arse. And it's really good.
Yeah. I mean, I probably will keep watching it. We'll get back into this when I give up my kind of final thoughts, but let's talk about iZombie.
Yeah.
iZombie, I went into thinking that I would really like it, and the pilot episode was a bit weak, and then I was expecting it to be a bit like... Well, no, what you said in the prescription part of this episode was correct. The pilot episode of The 100 is not representative of its quality level later on, but the pilot of iZombie is, mostly.
Yeah.
Where I would say that The 100 went from like a 2 out of 10 pilot to like a 7 or 8 out of 10 rest of the season. I'd say iZombie went from like a 4 out of 10 pilot to like a 6.5 out of 10 the rest of the season.
Okay.
I feel like the problem with iZombie is that it also has two personalities. And I'm going to explain that it's two personalities. One is a police procedural and one is a zombie crime story, I guess, kind of like a zombie thriller or zombie action, right?
Yeah.
So there are these two plot lines going on in iZombie. One is Liv Moore, who is the aptly named zombie main character. She works as a medical examiner for the Seattle Police Department, and she eats the brains of the murder victims, and she uses the memories she gains from eating these brains to help solve the crimes, right? That's a good kind of standard premise for a police procedural. Okay, fine. And then the second sub-thread is zombies are slowly growing in number in Seattle, and there's this one zombie called Blaine who's trying to start like an empire. And there's also a bit of subplot about how did the zombies form and what's happening with that. But there are these two kind of distinct plots, and the plot... See, this is my problem with police procedurals, is that the way a police procedural works is, this is its premise. Every week we're going to introduce you to characters that are quite not fleshed out and you don't really give a shit about, and then we're going to pretend that it's important that one of them is killed or one of them is the murderer, and it's this big shock, even though you don't really give a shit about these characters that are going to disappear before next week, right? And I feel like I just can't get into police procedurals anymore. Like, maybe it's an oversaturation or something, but iZombie just felt like half of the episode was good, where it's advancing the actual plot of the show, and in its defense, sometimes the police procedural kind of segment of the week would tie back into the main story, but that happened like 2 or 3 times, I would say.
Yeah, okay.
And then it's got this good part where it's telling this story about zombies taking over Seattle, basically, and then it's got this other part which is just half filler, and it's frustrating because the other character, Detective Babineau, who's like the detective at the police department that she works with, is a good character, and I feel like he's just wasted on this kind of police procedural nothingness. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's interesting because it just sounds like you really hate the police procedural part, whereas I quite liked that aspect of the show. This
is the thing. I've watched, like, I used to watch fucking Castle, which I understand is it's like police procedural with a gimmick. Of course, that's what they all are. And it was like I watched like fucking 8 seasons of this shit, and that didn't even have that much of an overarching story. It was just every week here's a different crime and solve it.
Well, see, that's why I prefer things like iZombie and like Veronica Mars. Like the first one is it for exactly that reason. You get the weekly police procedural thing, but then there is this sort of overarching plot to keep you invested, or to reward you for watching the whole thing.
But that's like saying you deserve a reward for sitting through this shitty police procedural part of the show. Like,
well, it depends whether you think the police procedural.
Okay, that's fair. I am being quite aggressive with my language, but it's like, how can I care about police procedurals? Have always just bugged me for this reason, because it's like, how can I care about characters that don't exist with any continuity? And I mean, obviously, the main characters do, but the actual core of each case is, okay, now here's a character, and oh no, turns out his brother was actually whatever. And whoa, that's a shocking twist, isn't it? And it's like, I don't care about this dude. Why do I care about this,
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, if you like a police procedural, that will probably be less of an issue for you. So I guess I'll go into some of my other points about iZombie. This is just my more nitpicky stuff. First of all, I just want to read out a list of the people that she eats, just so we can get on the same page about that, okay? Here's my list. Here are the people that she eats. A kleptomaniac, an artist, a sociopathic hitman, a paranoid Chinese snitch who knows kung fu, an adventurer / extreme sports nut, a hacker / troll, a young mother, a dating coach, a soldier, a mentally ill guy, a cheerleader, and a stoner. Those are the ones that I counted that aren't that are relevant to the police procedural stuff, that aren't like plot brains, right? Yeah. And there are some in there which I can pick out, which are kind of... I feel like the fault of the show is that it uses these aspects that she gains from these characters, and most of the time they're just to be a joke, right? So she'll learn... Let's say she steals the skills of the soldier, right? That's a good example. She steals the skills of the soldier, and so the useful stuff she gets is she gets memories of how he was killed. That's great for solving the crime. And then she also gets like gun skills, right? She develops a skill. Yeah. But then she also takes on aspects of his personality. And so that will represent itself as like when someone enters the room, she stands up and salutes for the episode, right? Mm-hmm. And this stuff is always just the butt of the joke. And I feel like it would be way better if she just didn't take the personality traits of the person and only took the visions and the skills. Because there'll be episodes where like she eats the brain of a stoner and it's just the same joke, which is... I ate the brain of a stoner, so now I'm going to get high. And that's the joke, and that's it. Right?
Yeah, that's the fun part.
But it's so predictable, don't you think? Like, she eats the brain of this young mother, and so she's like babying Detective Babineau for the entire episode, right? And it's just the same joke about this personality, this like single facet of this personality that is just like ground into the dust. And I feel like maybe if they went a bit lighter on it, it would work, but I don't know. I have one more thing to say of a negative before I start talking about what I actually liked about the show, because there were stuff that I liked. This is a weird one. I feel like the show has a really weird relationship to mental illness. Like, there are 2 or 3 times where she eats brains of someone who has a mental illness, right? So the soldier has PTSD. The hacker dude obviously has some kind of social anxiety stuff. There's one where she eats a guy who is like committed in a mental institution, and the way they represent this is very bizarre. Like when she eats the brains of the guy who's in the mental institution, his mental illness is, I guess, schizophrenia. I don't think it's ever said, or maybe I forgot. But the way it represents itself is every time she sees a cartoon devil, it becomes animated and starts talking to her. And it's like...
Yeah, that was weird.
This is not what a mental illness is like. I don't know if these guys know how this works, but, schizophrenia doesn't mean that cartoon devils start talking in a fucking, like, Mark Hamill-style Joker voice at you. It's very bizarre. Or when she has PTSD flashbacks, they kind of appear as these, like, very comic booky, like, heads circling around her, talking at her kind of thing. It's very bizarre. I don't know if that's really a criticism. It's just I feel like the person who wrote this show doesn't really understand what mental illnesses are.
I mean, yeah, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I want to talk... I feel like I'm being very negative about this show, and I want to talk about some of the things that I like. Yeah, I guess let's just go into that, so I don't just shit on this show all the time. It is... I don't know. It really did start picking up towards the end. I mean, the most interesting stuff to me was the zombies taking over Seattle plotline, right? And I guess I'll give a summary of this plotline, spoilers. One of the other zombies that is turned alongside Liv, our main character, is a guy called Blaine. And what he does is he's a zombie, and he basically goes around and turns other people into zombies and then says that he will sell them brains for $2,000 a week or whatever. And so he's building up this brains delivery network based on people that he turns.
Yeah, well, so he goes and finds rich people and turns them, then basically blackmails them.
Yeah.
And gets rich and develops, like you said, because he was a drug dealer, I think, before. So he basically sets up his own network.
Yeah, and so he kind of is building up his drug empire of selling brains, right? And that was really fascinating. That was really interesting. It was a cool concept, and it played into the story in a number of interesting ways. I liked Blaine's character. He was kind of like that cocky
guy who feels like he knows what he's doing, but really is like walking on the brink of like catastrophe, really. And it was interesting. He was a good character, but like, and there are other characters that become good, at least. One of the main characters is a guy called Major, who is Liv's ex-fiancée. After she becomes a zombie, she breaks up with him, calls off their engagement. And his character is clearly meant to be important at some point throughout the start of the episodes. But they like need to keep his actor on for when his character becomes relevant. So they shoehorn him in really awkwardly into the first like 5 episodes before he actually starts to get his own plot. And it's just like, he becomes one of the most interesting characters towards the end because he's this good, upstanding citizen who basically just fucking falls from grace to the bottom of the bottom and turns into basically a psychotic dude by the end of season 1. And it was great. There were really good characters in it. And it had this really compelling story about Liv trying to find the cure and Major figuring out that zombies exist and trying to piece together this brains thing and take down Blaine's kind of network. And it's so captivating, but the problem with iZombie is just it's held back by the police procedural stuff, which just doesn't... I don't know. I felt like it just didn't need to be there.
Okay.
That is my thesis.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it just... I mean, it sounds to me that, like, yeah, really your issue with the show was that you didn't want to be watching a police procedural.
Yeah.
Basically. That's sort of what it is. So
yeah, I don't know if that's...
I guess it was just a bad recommendation in that regard.
Yeah, actually, no. I take my criticism back from iZombie. This is on you, Elliot. You should feel bad. But the problem is I really fucking like the characters and the show when it's not that. When it goes into this interesting mystery / thriller / action, crime, whatever. It's really engaging.
That is the back end of the show behind the police procedural.
Yeah. Every time I was watching an episode, it would be like 30 minutes of police procedural, 15 minutes of plot development. And I was just fucking like praying that the police procedural stuff would be relevant. This would be one of the episodes where the police procedural stuff is relevant to the plot. And of course, 9 times out of 10, it's not. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it is just a format thing that I didn't like. But I feel like I really want to like this show more than I do because I like so much of it, but it's just the core of the show. The fact that it's a police procedural is just killing me. Like, I just can't. I can't.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so one thing I will say that I really liked about this show... Actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about both of these shows. They both... I don't know if it's a fucking CW thing, but they both do these really terrible intros at the start where it's like... Where for like the 100, it's like, my name's Clark, and I used to not breathe any oxygen, but then I landed on Earth, and now I can, because we're the 100. And it's a similar thing with iZombie, where it's like, my name's Liv Moore, and I used to have everything going, but then I turned into a zombie. Oh, shucks, and now I solve crimes, but I'm a zombie. And it's like these weird, like, it's not like the previously on iZombie thing, because it comes before that, and it's not the intro cards, because the intros and these, like... iZombie has like these comic book style interstitial cards to set up scenes and has a very comic booky intro theme, which is great, and I really loved it.
Yeah.
But it also just has this weird out of place welcome to iZombie thing that doesn't need to be there. And the 100 did it as well. I don't know if it's a CW thing or what. It's crazy.
Well, because I mean the other, like, if you think there are other DC shows like The Flash and
they do it as well.
Because they do it as well. It's I'm Barry Allen and I'm the fastest man alive, but I couldn't catch this guy in the previous episode.
Yeah, but I guess the problem I have with iZombie is that they do that. They do the, I'm Liv Clark and let me sum up the plot. And then they do the previously on iZombie, here's what you missed. And then they do the iZombie actual intro theme. And it's like they have 3 things to tell me this what it is. And I don't need to be told what it is 3 times. I get it. I barely even need to be told what it is 1 time, to be honest. Anyway, that's more nitpicky stuff. I guess I'll just kind of wrap up my general thoughts. I liked them both. I feel like they were both held back by being... being on CW. iZombie wasn't really CW-y. It was a bit just too TV, you know? It just felt a bit too TV. And if it was like... Maybe it was like a 6 or 7 episode mini series with all the police procedural stuff, or most of it at least cut out, and just crammed into 6... I would have really liked it. You know, it's obviously not that, and maybe that means I'm not its target audience, even though I desperately want to be. That's okay. I'll just give it like a 6 out of 10, I guess. And The 100 is a great show that they just had to put on the CW, and that just kind of... It knocks it down 2 or 3 blips every time an executive producer comes in and says, oh, maybe these 2 characters should get into a relationship. So I guess I'd give iZombie, I'll give a 6 out of 10, and The 100, I will give a 8 out of 10, and that's my ratings.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been rambling about these shows a lot because I did like them both, and I wanted to like them more than I did for both of them. And it's just like the CW is just a disappointing. It's good shows that you want to like, but you just get disappointed at every turn.
Yeah, they shoot themselves in the foot.
It's so annoying
on the CW network. Well, anyway, so I guess if I'm going to offer a bit of a response, well, my first part would be, I'm sorry that this experiment failed and accidentally ended up making you watch 2 shows.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I will probably not try this sort of thing again.
Next time we can do 3 shows. It'll be crazy.
But yeah, well, I'd say, I mean, based on what you say, if I were you, I'd stick with the 100 because I would argue that season 2 is a lot better than season 1.
Oh, that's one thing I wanted to talk about with the 100. I don't know how much more info we can get into after we've given the scores. Fuck it. I'm just going to talk about it anyway. The ending of season 1 of the 100 is the most stupid cliffhanger I've ever seen. It ends with they basically fight these like rebels on the ground. And what ends up happening is half of their camp is like fucked up or killed. And they wake up in like a containment camp where there is clearly like food and medicine and they're being taken care of. And it's played off like this thing where it's like, oh my God, we're in a place where we have food and civilization and it's everything we wanted.
This is awful.
This is terrible. This is just what we wanted, but it's such a cliffhanger. Yeah, it's really...
And I mean...
That got to me.
So obviously, like, spoilers for you a little bit, but obviously it ends up
going bad.
Not being the best place. I mean, it's not really a super surprising twist.
Of course. It wouldn't be a show if it was everything they wanted, of course. But it's like they present this twist as like, oh my God, they took care of my injuries and gave me clean clothes. No!
This is terrible. I agree. I had the same thought. She was like instantly panicking and I was like, okay, well I know she's going to end up being right.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why
Give
she
it a
feels
chance.
this way
Come
right
on,
now.
this is what you wanted. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, whereas,
I kind of cut you off.
No, also I'd say the 100 just sort of keeps getting better and better. Season 3 stumbles around a bit, but it's still good. Whereas iZombie is just more of the same. So, yeah, I mean, and I guess it seems that your fundamental issue is that you don't want it to be a police procedural.
I don't. I just wish it wasn't.
But I mean, that's more of what it is. So it's it keeps going. I kept liking it, but I don't think it's going to change for you. Whereas I think the 100, I would argue.
What if I started change.me petition, change.org or whatever, change it to not be a police procedural, make it a mini-series. Yeah, all right. So I guess I'll do the scores again just because we're about to end the episode. iZombie 6 out of 10 and the 100 8 out of 10.
Okay, well, tune in next week for when I bring Reuben a police procedural.
Yep. 2 out of 10. I'm calling it out. 2 out of 10. Yeah. Thank you for listening to another episode of Media MD. I'm by myself on this one. It feels weird. There's no Elliot here to tell me when I get things wrong, but I'll try and power through it anyway. So if you want to engage with the show more, you can check us out on our website, which is mediamdpodcast.com, or you can follow us on Twitter, which is @mediamdpodcast. Cool. So go do that. And then while you're doing that, I'll tell you about our next episode coming up, which is about Telltale's The Walking Dead video game. So yeah, we're tackling zombies 2 weeks in a row, but they're so zeitgeisty. So I don't know. I guess it's, I don't know, probably good or something. I don't know. Oh, God, why am I doing this by myself? It's terrible. Anyway, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks when we tackle Telltale's The Walking Dead.